Welcome to the Business Series podcast. My name is Ankush Jain, and I am a state of mind coach working with businesses and individuals. On each episode of this series, I'll be speaking to a coach or trainer on a different topic relevant to your career or personal development. Enjoy. Welcome back to another episode of the Business Series podcast. Today, I'm joined by Linda Ford, who is a coach who works mainly with professional women and has done so for over 10 years and is co-author of the book Women and Confidence. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Ankush. Delightful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Today we've got an interesting topic, which is how to be confident in all work situations. I'm sure this is something that many of us would like to know more about. And I want to just jump in and say, why isn't this already commonplace? Why isn't it that we aren't already confident regardless of the work situation we're in?
Well, I think we have a basic misunderstanding, first of all, of what confidence is and how it shows up in our life. I first of all like to define how I'm using that word confidence. And, you may think of confidence as being some kind of slickness or charismatic, behavior. But the way I'm using it here is for people to understand that it's a feeling of just being comfortable in your own skin, no matter what shows up for you. It's about knowing your worth, knowing your value. So it's not that people are confident all the time, but it's just understanding that, however I show up in life, whether it is fully expressed or you're very articulate, whatever, there are also going to be times when we're just not on our game and we don't, express ourselves clearly. So first of all, just to understand that it's perfectly normal to kind of go in and out of those states of being, and just to be okay with it, But we've got this hang up that we've always got to show up perfectly. And that actually puts a lot of pressure on people in the workforce.
I know your book talks about a lot of reasons why people think that they can't be confident. Could you kind of highlight a few of those for us?
Yeah, sure. Well, we wrote the book because we saw this problem that women were holding themselves back and continually second guessing themselves, even though they were very well trained and qualified and well educated people. And we were able to identify some of the, let me just say, the excuses that these women were using to explain why they couldn't show up fully 100% or why they were always holding themselves back and playing small. And so there was a whole range of excuses. And in the book, we actually refer to them as lies. Not that we're calling people liars, but a better way of explaining that is just a misunderstanding of why they're feeling the way they are. So some of those excuses that they were using were, I can't be confident because I'm afraid of criticism. I'm afraid of someone critiquing my work and not, appreciating me. And the stress over not being able to deal with that was really huge, right? And then another one was I can't be confident in certain situations. And I think we were planning on talking about that one specifically today on this podcast. So it's like very situation specific. Depending on how many people are in the room, I can be confident or not. Depending on whether my boss is listening in to me giving a presentation, I can be confident or not. So we found that these women were really clear and really convinced that all of these external conditions, these outside issues, were very relevant to how they showed up. So that's what we focused on in the book. Each chapter really goes into depth about and gives examples of these specific lies that these women were telling themselves. So it's, being afraid to make a mistake, being afraid to not give a great presentation, just being aware that there are too many people in the conference room listening to my presentation or not. So all kinds of specific things like that.
How do people turn this around? How do they go from a feeling of lacking confidence, like you say, regardless of whether they are competent or not? They may have all the skills and training, but how do they move from that place of, oh, I'm not sure, or I'm nervous, or I don't know if I can do this, through to a place of confidence? I've got this, regardless of the situation.
Yeah, coming from a background of I've been coaching now for 10 years, and I have been in this particular new paradigm that we talk about, Ankush, for the last 3 years. So I have kind of straddled both of those worlds, where I used to coach women with confidence issues, and we would do a lot of work on analyzing our thinking, the quality of our thinking. What are we thinking about ourselves that's making us, show up insecure? And from my own experience, the more we kind of delved into that and kind of really critiqued our thinking, it became very clear to me after a while that actually it wasn't really helping women to do that. And at best, I was just giving them some good coping, managing skills to kind of get over that. But so they would, analyze their thinking, they would change their mindset, do a lot of mindset work, and they'd come back and they feel like they had conquered something and they would feel more secure. But then after about a month, they would kind of come back with the same problem. And it was like square one again, here's that old feeling. And so now that I'm in this new understanding, what I share with my clients is more of a helping them understand just the nature of thought and how it impacts us. How thought is, for the first, especially in this area of insecurity, it's actually not personal. And what we tend to do is take our thinking really personally. But when we understand that thought is actually very transient by nature, and that it's just kind of coming through us and it wants to move through us, when we have that understanding, then we can kind of unlock ourselves and detach ourselves from the feeling that it gives us. We don't kind of make it into the big thing that it is. And I used to do this all the time in my life at work. I would have a thought, an insecure thought, and then I'd have that horrible sinking feeling. And I would get locked into it and stuck there thinking, oh, that's actually me. If I'm thinking it, then it must be true. And I kind of had this misunderstanding that I came out of it thinking, well, I'm just an insecure person. I'm just an introvert. That's who I am. So what I do now is that I share this understanding and point women in that direction of just seeing the nature of thought and how it is having this impact on us and how it doesn't have to. And that if we just leave it alone and let it work through us, just like clouds passing in the sky, it will eventually just move on. So the more we can kind of understand that nature, the less impact it has, less hold it has on us.
Do you have some examples or case studies so people can understand that a little bit clearer for them? What you mean by understanding the nature of it?
Yeah, well, there was one woman that I was coaching. She was an academic. She was high up in academia as an administrator, and she had a clear case of imposter syndrome. That feeling where you're at a meeting and you're kind of thinking, oh, I don't belong here. And it's only so long before somebody's going to find out that I'm not qualified to be here. That whole feeling of that. Now, she didn't feel that all the time. In her quiet times, she would just relax. And she knew her job. But as soon as she got into a situation like a conference meeting, and there were other men, particularly men in the meeting, she would just freeze up and have all kinds of busy thinking about, what am I doing here? How long is it going to take them to find out that I don't belong here? What are they thinking about me? And so there was a lot of busyness going on in her head about that. And so when we got together and I started coaching her, I pretty much just shared with her that, well, what if that was just thought coming in? What if that wasn't really you? And it wasn't personal, and that it was just some busyness going on? What if you were just to leave that alone and not listen to it and wait and see what happens? So we had some experiments where she would go through that, and it took her a while to kind of, she didn't manage to feel better the first few times doing that. But eventually she just kept reminding herself that, oh, this is just thought coming through me. This is, it's transitory by nature. It will go. And let me just experiment and try out and see how that works. And she definitely experienced a lessening of her anxiety and stress around that, because the more she could see how that equipment of her mind was working and operating, it really lessened her stress and her feelings of insecurity. So again, it was just like really just having that opportunity in your day-to-day life, and seeing this as not just a concept or a philosophy that we're using, but to actually apply it and see, yeah, okay, I'll just sit here and remind myself that's just thinking, it's not me. Let's see what happens.
So what I'm hearing you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's very natural to have insecure thinking, all sorts of thinking, regardless of situations we're in at work or anywhere else for that matter. And what I hear you saying is, rather than using a technique to change that thinking or to think new thoughts, it's simply a case of not paying attention to those thoughts and allowing them to pass as all thoughts do, and then take action regardless.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, when I have insecure thoughts, for me, if there's anything to do, it's about reminding myself of how all of this works. And so that has really helped me just to understand the nature of thinking, but also just to remember that we've got this amazing mind that has this built-in ability to correct itself as well. Yes, thought is passing, and I can either get caught up in it or I can just watch it move on. But also to understand that my mind has this ability to self-correct itself and to kind of have a clear space to allow new creative thinking to come through. So when I used to coach before, there was a lot of busy doing work of writing down all your limiting beliefs that you were going through, and wondering, well, where did that come from, and how can I change that thought to a more empowering thought, and let me put a little sticky note here to remind myself that I am worthy, or I am articulate, or whatever. There was a lot of busyness there to really kind of parse thought, to analyze it. But I don't do that now, because I found that it just, first of all, it just didn't work, and it just added more layer upon layer of thinking, and just created an even busier mind. So if there is anything to do, it's just reminding yourself that this is just normal. It's normal for me to feel insecure sometimes, and it's normal for me to feel confident sometimes, and just to allow that to, it's really trusting that this stuff actually works up here, that what's happening in the mind is going to serve you and work for your benefit.
So what would you say to someone who says, well, I don't have a self-correcting mechanism because every time I'm in situation X, I just fall to pieces, or I don't know where my confidence goes, and I try and not think about it, but I can't seem to help myself. What would you advise someone like that? Or what would you say to someone like that?
Well, here's the thing. For every person that's really insecure and has felt as if you've gone through life always feeling insecure, I can bet you that you also have had those moments where you have felt confident. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There has to have been pockets in your life when you have experienced that sense of well-being, where you've articulated something confidently, you've expressed yourself well, you've felt comfortable in your own skin, even if it was for like a momentary, just a moment. We've all had that experience. But what we tend to do is we tend to write that off, even if it just lasts a minute, and we kind of reduce it to, oh, that's just a lucky break that I got. I just happened to feel confident for a second or for the day. Maybe I got out of bed on the right side. We kind of reduce it to fluke, to luck. And what I'm saying is, so where did that come from? It's obviously something that is, it's there within you. And I used to have this experience all the time of just feeling insecure, but every now and again, because I used to teach literature at university, and I would go in there all up in my head, wondering what I was going to say, totally insecure. And then as I just relaxed into the moment, I would have these moments where I'd think, wow, where did that come from? That wonderful thing I just said, it was just amazing. So I did have those pockets, but I was always writing it off as just luck of the draw. So what I'm suggesting is that you may not believe right now that your mind is designed for success and confidence and well-being, but just consider, what if it was? What if you were hardwired for success and confidence? What if that was who you really are? And all this other stuff that you've been doing, all this other insecure thinking was just that. It was just all this busy thinking. But underneath all of that, at your core, you are confident. So I would just suggest to those people who are doubting that, oh, how do I know this is true? Just try it out for yourself. And when you have those rare moments of confidence, sit with it, acknowledge it, and just, question, where did that come from? And see what happens. Try it out in your life.
So to wrap up, what are the key takeaways you want our listeners to leave this episode with?
I would say, it's all very well to sit and listen to someone talking about this. That, I mean, it does offer great hope, but get out in your life and experiment. Try it out for yourself. So the next time you're feeling that wave of insecurity wash through you, just remind yourself, oh yeah, there's all that busy thinking that's really not me. And so now what? What's going to happen now? Try out the experiment and just remember that thought is transitory. That's one thing you can always remind yourself, and that you are innately confident, and allow yourself that opportunity to experience that more readily and more fully than you ever have in your life. So look for those opportunities where it is coming out, and get curious about it. And again, it's about experimenting in your life, having that insight for yourself in your own life. Don't just take my word for it.
And finally, if people want to find out more about you, or want to get in contact with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, you could go to my website, which is lindafordcoaching.com. And we also, Lana and I, my co-author, are going to be producing a podcast, which we haven't actually launched yet, but that's going to be coming down the pipeline. But just go to the website. you can always reach out to me there.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today and talking about confidence and how to be confident in all work situations. I'll be back next time with another interviewee talking about a topic relevant to business.
Thanks, Ankush.
Thanks for listening to the Business Series podcast. If you want to hear more, you can click on the subscribe button below. You can share this with someone else who can benefit, or you can like it and encourage others to listen. Also, it would be great if you left a comment below, as I love hearing from listeners and I want to keep creating great content for you. Thanks for listening.